The machine beeped to signal that Nenna's heart rate was rising. She was coming out of a 4-month-long coma. Shola looked over and saw Nenna move her legs and fingers. He rushed over to her. "Nenna, Nenna, can you hear me? Open your eyes," Shola screamed. He was excited that Nenna was alive and responsive. Shola rushed out the door to call the nurse. They both ran back into the room to see Nenna looking around. The nurse took the oxygen mask off her. "Welcome back, my dear. How are you feeling?" the nurse asked. "Where am I and what is wrong?" Nenna asked the nurse. She was uncoordinated. Nenna did not know where she was and could not remember how she got there. "You are at the hospital," said the nurse. Nenna looked around her body, trying to coordinate what was going on. She saw a protruding stomach. Her eyes widened, and in total shock, she screamed, "Pregnant? What? Why? How? Where? How am I pregnant? When did I get pregnant?" She was even more confused. She asked so many questions without waiting for any answer. Shola moved closer to hold her and calm her down. Nenna was very frantic. Everything was confusing. "Calm down and we can tell you everything," the nurse explained to Nenna, that she had just woken up from coma and she had been in it for 4 months. The nurse asked her, "What is the last thing you remember?" Nenna paused for a few seconds and responded, "I was about to come down the stairs and suddenly I fell and tumbled down the stairs. Then I had a sharp pain in my head. That's all I can remember." The nurse informed Nenna that it was normal for her to feel the pain because she had a severe head injury. The nurse asked if she remembered anything before the fall, but Nenna could not. When she tried to force the memory before the fall, she had severe migraine and blurred vision. The nurse told her to rest. The nurse informed Nenna that she had post-traumatic amnesia. She could not remember much for now, but in a few weeks her memory would slowly return. Nenna asked about her pregnancy. The nurse calmed her down and told her they would explain more later, but at the moment she needed to rest. "Where is my boyfriend Charles?" Nenna asked. Shola was about to spill the story to Nenna, but the nurse interrupted. "He went home briefly. He will be back." Shola was furious at the nurse. The nurse took Shola outside to tell him not to tell Nenna any bad news, as that would trigger another coma for Nenna. Shola loved Nenna too much to cause her any harm. So Shola kept the truth to himself. Shola calmly agreed for the sake of Nenna. The next day, Nenna woke up to flowers. She had lots of flowers in her room, and the nurse informed her that Charles had brought them when she was asleep. Nenna was very happy that Charles came by, but she was also sad that the nurse did not wake her up to see Charles. She missed her boyfriend and wanted to see him. The nurse told her to rest so she could heal faster. Nenna asked them when Charles would be back to visit, but they had no answer for her. A few hours later, Charles showed up at the hospital. He was so happy to see Nenna, he rushed to give her a hug and was excited that she was awake. "Do you remember anything?" Charles asked, but Nenna said no. Charles looked surprised to see the pregnancy and asked Nenna about the protruding belly. Nenna had no answers because she couldn't remember how she got pregnant. As Charles sat beside Nenna on the bed, 2 police officers walked into the room. The hospital had filed a case with the police because they suspected that Nenna was pushed down the stairs. The police attempted to ask her a few questions, but she could not remember anything before the fall. Charles ordered the police to leave as they were causing Nenna a lot of pain. The police left, but they told Nenna they would like to speak with her when she was ready. When the police walked out, Charles pretended to go buy some food and left the hospital room to follow the police officers. He caught up to them and gave them some information. Charles asked the police to detain and question Lola because he was the last person that saw Nenna and he had brought Nenna to the hospital. He also suggested that Shola probably got Nenna pregnant while at the hospital because Shola spent the most time with Nenna. Charles informed the police that Nenna was his girlfriend and was not pregnant before the fall. The police listened quietly and informed him that they would look into it. As they were about to walk away, Charles was angry. He asked the police if they were not going to arrest Shola for questioning. The police responded no and kept walking. Charles was frustrated because he really wanted someone to pay for Nenna's pain. He had not come to see Nenna in days, and that made Nenna very sad. Shola could not stand to see his friend sad, so he decided to go to find Charles. Shola went to Charles' house without calling him. As he knocked on the door, a girl approached the door and opened. She had on Nenna's shirt. She introduced herself as Charles's girlfriend. Shola asked for Charles, who was in the bedroom. Charles heard his name and came to the living room to see Shola. Charles grabbed Shola and stepped outside, closed the door to get away from his new girlfriend, and yelled at Shola for showing up to his house unannounced. Shola reminded him that he had a girlfriend who just came out of coma and was still at the hospital. Shola also informed Charles that he overheard his conversation with the police and how he saw Charles was happy that Nenna could not remember anything. Shola accused Charles, "I know you pushed Nenna up the stairs because you wanted to kill her to abort the pregnancy." Charles was shocked that Lola was aware of Nenna's pregnancy. "How do you know that?" Charles asked in panic. "Because Nenna is my best friend. She told me how you asked for an abortion." Charles raged at Shola, who stood his ground and dared him to come close. Shola said, "I hope Nenna gets her memory back so she can remember how wicked you are." But Charles responded, "Well, I just have to make sure she never gets the memory back." Shola turned around and walked away from Charles. For a few weeks, Charles visited the hospital even more frequently than he did before. He pretended to care so much for Nenna. Nenna was so happy to see Charles every day that she forgot all about Shola, who had been there for her the entire time she was in the coma. Shola felt cheated and abandoned. He left and promised never to come back. But Shola loved Nenna too much to stay away from her for too long. A few weeks later, he changed his mind and visited Nenna. When he walked into the hospital, he saw the police officers talking with Charles and Nenna. Charles had convinced Nenna and the police that Shola was the one behind Nenna's predicament. The police arrested Shola and took him to the station for questioning. Nenna believed Charles and she was very sad and upset at her best friend Shola. She felt betrayed and hurt. Shola was too shocked. He did not know where those lies came from. Charles had told Nenna a lot of stories and they were all lies against Shola. He was the one that found Nenna unconscious at the bottom of the stairs. He was the one that brought her to the hospital, and he had stayed with her the entire time. "How could she do this to me? I have been the one loving and caring for her this entire time," Shola said. Because there was no other witness, all fingers pointed to Shola that he pushed Nenna down the stairs. After a few days, Nenna was discharged from the hospital and Charles took her home. When Nenna got home, she became sick again. She vomited violently and had high temperature. Charles convinced Nenna that those were the symptoms related to the pregnancy. One day, after eating some food that Charles kept for her, Nenna vomited so badly that she started bleeding very heavily. She called the neighbor who took her to the hospital. The doctors battled to stabilize her because she had lost a lot of blood. After a series of tests, the doctors found out that she miscarried and she had been slowly poisoned over a period of time. The police were called in to arrest Charles for questioning. Charles denied all the accusations, but as he was being held for questioning, Nenna's memory slowly returned. She yelled for the nurse who rushed into her room. She narrated how Charles raped her, and when she got pregnant, he denied the pregnancy and tried to force her to abort the child. The nurse was worried about the truth of her story because she had just recently had a severe head trauma. So Nenna convinced the nurse by showing the nurse text messages she had with Charles about the rape issue. Charles had acknowledged the rape and threatened to make Nenna a laughingstock if she told anyone about it. He even threatened her that if she left him, he would leak Nenna's naked pictures he took secretly. Nenna also informed the nurse that Shola came to her house because she had told Shola to come by in the evening to meet with Charles and beg him to accept the pregnancy. Shola went late, and by the time he arrived, Charles had already left after pushing Nenna down the stairs. He found Nenna laying unconscious at the bottom of the stairs. The nurse called the police back to the hospital to get all the information. Nenna and Shola showed up at court to testify against Charles. Charles was sentenced to prison for attempted murder and for rape. Nenna apologized to Shola for not believing him and also thanked Shola for protecting her and bringing her to the hospital on time. Shola and Nenna reconciled and stayed great friends. The moral of this story is that we should always respect people's words. When someone says no, it means no. It doesn't matter if they're your spouse, your friend, or a stranger. No means no. What other moral lesson did you learn from this story? Please leave your response in the comment section. I love to read your comments. I hope you enjoyed this story. Thank you so much for subscribing to my channel. See you in the next story. Bye.